finally got time to look at this. Sorry, like I said, I've been sick and had throat. My throat was pretty swollen, so I like couldn't talk for a few days. Um, but I have time now, so we're looking at this. We'll see what different tips, what kind of advice I can give you. Fun game. Life of me can't get up bronze 4 or 5 on DPS. Try to focus on working on my mistakes. Um, I can bring down both enemy healers, but then my team goes on to lose a 3v4. Dueling my stats, normally lose about 80% of my games. Alright, sorry, I was actually looking at your post. So, alright, so just kind of spamming choke here. Not a whole thing going on. It's a good flank, but if you coming up here, I mean, first off, I don't know why you pop your overload early. You want to be using that for the whole thing, probably. But if you come up here and shotgun, I don't know if you shotgun or not, but I noticed that I feel like that would have killed him at that range if you hit him with a shotgun point blank. But yeah, otherwise setting up your turret here is fine. Going for flank, it's and again, like at this kind of range, yeah, you want to be using your shotgun, your secondary fire. Does like a lot more damage here. Like you do incredible amounts of damage with your secondary fire here. Alright, now you've got 2 picks. This is good, but now you're still like 116 health. Like after you get this, realize that your team isn't pushing up with you and kind of like see where everybody's at, right? Because like your Kirika is over here, your tank is here, your Amoira is here. So your team is fighting mostly like a 3v2 in this side room here, and then the soldier is just pushing cart. So at this point where you've done two, like you've done really good jab, but now you like just don't die, right? After you kill this, I mean, at 116 you realize you're not getting healed, right? Yeah, just back around the corner and like make sure you don't die. Because you're very, very close to easily dying there. But like good, you did good. Like this is something that probably wouldn't work outside of bronze, like this type of flank. Maybe in silver it probably would, but like just going for this long, generally people will like start turning around and whatnot, but like obviously, yeah, you're getting value. Like I see what you're saying. So yeah, probably pushing up to the right here, yeah. Taking this would be a good angle. Like, the main thing to look at, I think, right here is, like, where are you throwing your turret, right? Because, like, your turret sitting right here isn't really going to do anything, especially on top of the Doomfist. They can just kill it right away. Try to look for, like, angles where your turret's going to be really annoying for people to try to hit. Like, if you set it up, like, back here when their team is, like, trying to push in, like, then it can be, like, harassing their back line, and it gives them another target if you're going to be playing flank Torb to be shooting at. Well, overall, like, yeah, I think you've been doing pretty well. Like, you've been getting kills and whatnot, doing, I mean, especially. I think the big thing here is, like, use your shotgun. Like, using your shotgun at that range, like, using your shotgun right here, like, the Lucio absolutely dies. Because your shotgun will do, like, 2 or 3 times the damage that your primary fire does. Definitely get used to using your secondary fire when you're up close, because that would have been an easy kill for you. So here you just kind of aren't paying attention to where the enemy DPS are, right? I think this is the main thing of like, what I was saying like earlier, like why you're like, um, you're flanking probably like in higher ranks would be a lot less effective. Is you're just kind of like walking out in the middle of team fights. I think this is the main thing that's possibly like that I see with a lot of people is they'll go in and like a lot of fights they'll get a lot of kills, and then other fights they'll die at the start of them, or they'll just have people just have bad positioning, right? Like standing up here, there's nowhere for you to go, and thus you just end up dying to the Bastion, because like it would be super easy for you to do all of this damage, right? Like from right here, where you can just walk behind a corner, or from over here where you can walk behind a corner. Generally, like having some sort of cover that you can go to is the go-to. So we'll see more. I mean, we'll see more throughout this, like what kind of habits you have. But it's just something that is worth mentioning, that positioning is a big part of this game. So if you're dying like during times that you don't need to be, like if you were out here helping your team win this, right? Like if you were, so you can go in and get 2 kills or something, right? But then if your team is still in like, or you got, I think you got a kill. Yeah, well, their Doom died, so it was still a 4v4. Then you die, then your team is in a 4v4, I believe. So then, like, you're not there to, if you're like the big, if you want to be the big carry of the team and you're not there, then you're not having the impact that you want to have, right? See, here's good because you're playing it behind cover, right? And you even get the finish on it. Like, your team's up a player. Well, now they're down a player. There's nothing you can do about that, right? But you played cover, right? You played next to cover, and thus, like, you ended up having a big impact, and here you're almost caught out of cover again. Yeah, this fight isn't your fault. I mean, your other teammates, but you do want to be okay. This is not a good time to be using Molten Core though. Yeah, so during this fight is not your fault, right? Like your team's just way out of positioning and getting caught in the open and mowed down by their team. But coming in here is not a time, right? Their Doomfist goes through, and he's over here, and he's going to go for, right, like your Kiriko's back, oops, back over here. Oh my gosh, I can't hit buttons. I'm assuming this is where he's going, right? Yeah, so over here you got a Doomfist on your supports, right? But instead of helping, like coming back and like helping, then you're just off trying to 1v3 these guys over here, and now your supports can't help you, right? Because they're off dealing with the Doomfist, and now you're trying to 1v3 these guys with your ultimate. And so now your Kiriko dies, you aren't over here to help, and now you try to come back, right? Just gotta be aware of situations going on, because it's one of those, like, if they didn't, like, that Doom could, you know, easily just run through. And, like, using your Molten Core to get a pick, it can work in sometimes, but also then in other times it might not have anything if, like, your team isn't actually engaged in the fight or about to engage in a fight. And then you have to back off, and now their whole team is here, right? And now when, like, you have the full team engaged, like, it's not that your Molten Core is worthless, right? Because you got to kill with it, like, but now that they're here for a full team fight, right? And your team is coming here. Now you don't have your ultimate. So they managed to come all the way back from spawn and start again, right? Because you killed the Bastion, but the Bastion's already here at the team fight, and now you don't have Molten Core when your team is actually here to capitalize if you killed him. So that's something that's just I think, like, to a certain degree, yeah, it's not your team isn't capitalizing on your kills, but also, like, that one, yeah. So, like, going for this, all you did was trade. I think if you came in here and got Molten Core on them, you could probably get like 2 kills, and you might be able to swing this fight if you still had it. And it's not like, oh, it's just your fault thing, but it's you know, I mean, it's everybody's on the teams. You know, like they're not doing great either. Like you're getting picks, and the one fight I think you carried pretty hard with the flank, but then after that it was, you know, like your supports were getting dove by Doomfist. If you went and helped them, then they could come and push with you. You use your Molten Core with your team, then you might get you know, you might be able to win the fight if you can then swing it with maybe 2. 2 kills. Alright, so you hear them going off to the right. Okay, good, you turn. Good, helping your D.Va chase down. You go back to main. It's good. Probably want to set up your turrets somewhere. Just a good turret kill on their Ana. Okay, so now what you've been looking at is their Pharah. If she's an issue, she might not. To be fair, like sometimes you can just completely ignore it, Pharahs, and sometimes you kind of have to deal with them. I do like this tech though, that you know about that. That can be very annoying to go against it when they're throwing them through teleporters onto the sports. Can be really effective though. Okay, so their Bastion's behind you. You get the Pharah kill, that's good. You gotta go back and help your team. Throw a turret, good. Yeah, I think most of this is pretty good. Not sure if you need the sim barrier here or not. So I'm not sure if you end up, because like I mean your team, like you guys are doing pretty good. Like you guys have won most of your fights. Well, I guess on. Yeah, I mean here you could have turned around. I mean there's like 8:31. She starts shooting at you. Yeah, it's like a solid 3 seconds that you could have turned around and shot at her. Granted, this is also on your D.Va, right, for not turning around and defense matrixing this. She's not paying attention. But, you know, you just gotta do the best you can. But, I mean, if she's shooting at you, like, you gotta turn around and try to kill her. I see here the Bastion going off. I wouldn't throw turrets yet, because they're not really, like, pushing through. Like, your team isn't here to take pressure off them, because they just kind of, like, eliminate your turrets right away. Their Pharah's off on the left, and you have to do something about that. Yep, she's just, like, sitting in the middle of your team. I got something you should be looking for right away. I'm assuming you guys win this one. Right. Maybe not. Watch, their D.Va just flew past you. Their Pharah's up above, so there's a couple you can be. Just always looking for people to damage. Like, there's not a whole ton to really comment on this one, honestly. But, I mean, for the most part, you guys do pretty good. So, it's, like you say, you lose, what, 70-80% of your games. If you had a game where you had a loss, it's a lot easier to comment on. Because it's one of those, like, there's not a whole ton going on, like with a lot of, like there was a couple times where like yeah you use Molten Core when you should have played with your team. I think there's a couple of things that like 1v1ing a Doomfist as Symmetra and him not using any of his abilities on you is not going to happen outside of Bronze, and like going as a flank Torb and like having three people not be able to kill you is not really going to happen. I can see some things like maybe you're dying a bit much because you're not playing cover in other matches. But granted, I mean, if these things are working, you know, they're like it's nothing wrong with playing flank Torb. Like if it's working on teams, and you know, there's no reason not to do it. Honestly, just be careful when you're doing it, because I could see that in other teams. If you have a loss that you want me to look at, that you feel like you had like you carried your team and it wasn't enough, because it's harder than being like this, where like you did enough, right? Like you played pretty well for the most part. Like I definitely think you're better than Bronze 4, sure. I mean, if uh but um yeah, it's harder, easier to tell people like, you know, these are places where you could have been better, as opposed to these are place, you know, like why it's hard to tell why you're losing 70% or 80% of your losses if you know you send me a loss. Like, so if you want to, I'm more than happy to look at that if you want to let me know. I know there wasn't a whole ton in here, but there was also just uh I don't really play a ton of Torb, and I mean I think you're doing things well for most part, but again it's mostly just when you die, if you die out of cover, right, and then you're not helping your team. Like it was the same thing with this Widowmaker that I had the other day. That was they were really mechanically good, and they were getting kills like 2 or 3 headshots a get, you know, like sometimes in single every fight, but they were dying or just not rotating, trying to get an angle and not participating in fights, and they were over by either the time they could get a good angle, or they would just like be somewhere that they would die when they didn't need to before they even do anything, and then you know that was like all of their fights that they were in. So half their fights they were carrying, and half the fights they were basically throwing, and I don't think you were like too out of position with a lot of them, but also sometimes people just weren't shooting. And then like just work on using your shotgun more, because there was like a lot of places where you could have been killing people pretty easily if you just had your shotgun. So yeah, if you want some better advice, I can try and give you better advice if you have like a loss. But there are those few things. Yeah, so definitely positioning, use your shotgun more, um, and then ult usage when you're and also just paying attention, because sometimes there's like the Pharah's right behind you, or the Pharah's walking in your team, and you can hear her but you're not like looking at her, or when the Doomfist goes after your supports you're not paying attention to it. There's things that like you just need to recognize where your teammates are more, and where the enemy team is, and I think that will also help you a lot. So yeah, if you get another replay code, let me know. If not, hopefully it's helped.